fingers to the eyes, reach a knife, and just stab the guy. The only way to stop a guy was to choke him out, or the neck locks that we do. Not all people walked in my shoes and seen the shit that I've seen. So their judgment that I will block 360 and grab the hand and turn the hand around and bend the wrist and like, oh yeah, good luck with that. Is that police officer going to be on the ground with one guy, but what happens when he has buddies and they're coming? That's where the Krav comes in. And I asked them, why do you want Krav Maga? Because you guys are like, you got BJJ, you got Vale Tudo, you guys are like, and they are really tough people.
Yeah.
I would say 14, 15 years active service and more than 20 plus in the commandos, special forces as an officer in reserves. And the last 2 years in the border protection, and you're with me as well. And people, if they don't know, he's our Krav guy in with many of the platoons. So we're blessed to have Alex as well. He called me in the office. He said, I am appointing you to do hand-to-hand combat trainer for the unit. Eli Avikzar, the master, rest in peace, was my instructor back in the day.
Hello guys, welcome to IDF Krav Maga training channel. Now we have here Itay Gil from the Yamam unit. The Yamam unit is the counter-terrorism unit.
It's the top elite counter-terror warfare team, yes. But
so,
I'm a former member, yes,
yeah.
Not to confuse
So
anyone.
the first question will be, what is the Yamam unit? How do you get to the Yamam?
Wow. Challenging question. Well, the counter-terror team started, I believe, in 1974 after they needed elite force that can deal with hostage crisis. And Israel, if people know a little bit about the history, we had here our share of confrontations, conflicts, acts of terrorism in so many different environments at so many different periods in our life. And they needed a high-end elite force that can specialize in counter-terrorism, explosives, breaching, rappelling, doing the most extreme job descriptions under enormous amounts of pressure, trace, track down, launch teams against radical jihadi cells and what we call prevention strikes. So the idea is, of course, not to wait until you have a hostage situation or a mass killing. The idea is to monitor, track, trace, intercept, engage. So a lot of the work of the agency, the unit, is prevention. It would be pretty too late if there's already a mass shooting in a public place or a suicide bomber like we had in the past. That's what the unit does. Regarding recruiting, selection, honestly, I would say it's probably, comparing to many other units around the world, you know, big names from the Europeans, Americans, and so on. I think the screening, the filtering, the selection is probably one of the most rigorous and most challenging and difficult. The combination of being, first of all, very healthy and here, very strong in the mind. You must have a lot of willpower.
Do you need any military background?
You must have served at least 3+ years, and also what we call lead in command. So you must be a sergeant. So you went to sergeant school. You served in one of the top special forces, and only then you can apply. So an estimation 2,500, 3,000 every year apply. They want to join the unit. The unit goes out every year in public and announces we are looking for new recruits to join the unit. There's a filtering system, interviews, polygraph, psychiatrist, psychologist, health and fitness regime tests, with many different challenges. And every couple of years they change the style of the measurements they do to raise the bar. And that's what we're looking for. So if you are a really brilliant guy that comes from the service, and after your service you took some time off and you went to learn to become an engineer, you may be a perfect candidate, because we're also looking for guys that are highly educated and bright. So you need to have a real good logical mind. You can solve problems, be creative, work in a team, and understand that your life is on the line. It's not a regular 9-to-5 job. It's all around the clock, 365 days a year. There's no such thing. We don't fight in a certain weather or a certain day. Guys are trained in all weathers, all conditions, all terrains, and it's an experience.
When did you see Krav Maga for the first time? How did you get to martial arts?
Well, martial arts I started when I was a young boy, just like probably most of the people that were born in the 60s. So I started with judo, I did a little bit karate, I got into a little bit later on, / kickboxing, Thai boxing. At a very early age, I was exposed through the judo. I bumped into Russian immigrants that came to live in Israel. It's a blessing that I met amazing Russian grapplers that did what is called sambo, the Russian version of
self-defense.
They have a combat sambo that is like our Krav, actually. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Give them respect for that. But the sports section was like they wear a gi on the top, shorts, and wrestling shoes. So it was a combination. I would say that they're very good on throwing takedowns way before we heard, MMA, BJJ. So I was doing sambo when I was probably 12 or 13 for 5-6 years until the age 18. And I actually was competing in sambo in Israeli competitions when the Russians came. A lot of Russians came here that had a background in the sport. They competed in judo, and in judo there was no leg locks, but in sambo you can do ankle and leg locks, something that I never specialized in as a young kid. I can honestly say that I was surprised that what we know today as the guard, someone wrapped his legs around you, that was common in my days, they would automatically slide to the back and take an angle or a leg lock or an ankle lock. And I did not know what it is at age 12, 13. So I was tapping out nonstop. And I was like, what's this? And so I was a curious boy with a will and a desire to study and learn and get my ass beaten. I had no problem with tapping out. It was the process of learning. And leg locks suddenly was like, wait a second. That is amazing. I did not know. I always came from I would say a classical sport where there's real serious rules. You tap out. What we called knee waza was 15, 25 seconds, mate, stand up and go, throwing again on the ground on sambo. They let you grapple on the ground. Par terre. If I'm saying it right. Yeah. And, am I saying it right? Yeah. So, they let you grapple on the ground where there was no standing up. So I needed to improve grappling skills. So, after, I think, 2-3 years, something like that, competing against all the Russians and Georgians that came to Israel that were a real tough group of people to beat, I was ranked, I think at age 17, I was ranked number 2 in Israel in championships as the second best player in the up to 70 or 75 kilos in sambo. So I was pretty good at it. And of course, later on, I joined the military, age 18. And because I was apparently a gifted athlete, I managed to get into a good unit in the military. And immediately we started on boot camp, running, jumping, climbing, crawling, doing obstacle courses, Wingate, the military branch over there with all the obstacles. And you get to study some basic self-defense, the Israeli Krav version. Eli Avikzar, the master, rest in peace, was my instructor back in the day. So he was working with all the infantry teams, paratrooper teams, and all the recon teams. So we had the liberty and the pleasure to train with him. Very, very interesting individual, inspiring individual. He was like a little bit of a crazy guy that he brought his own, badass training to the fields where it was not the same as a civilian world, because we needed to learn in a very short time how to smash someone with the rifle, different strikes, how to defend from a knife, someone trying to take away your firearm, techniques from chokes and escapes and side kicks and stuff. Remember that in the military we wear full vests and equipment, so it's not what the people think. It's jumping around, sparring, jab, cross, uppercut. You have the liberty. It's the idea is like, in matter of weeks, if you go into the battlefield, you are mentally and physically conditioned to smash all enemies. So that's how I started Krav Maga, and later on, I was sent back to the Wingate military faculty, a combat training school where Eli Avikzar was the head instructor, and some other great guys as well. And I did combat fitness and Krav qualification in early 80s. And I went back to the unit, served there. After my service, that I've been in Lebanon quite a bit, and tough times. I took a little bit of time off, and then Yamam came. So pretty much almost no rest in between. I would say 14, 15 years active service, and more than 20 plus in the commando, special forces as an officer in reserves. And the last 2 years in the border protection, and you're with me as well. And people, if they don't know, he's our Krav guy in with many of the platoons. So we're blessed to have Alex as well.
I remember you told me that you argued with Eli about the ground in Krav Maga.
Yes, it was not an argument. You can't argue with a guy that he's a big master and I was a young guy in my 20s. But as a judo guy, I remember clearly when we were at Bahad 8, and they had a blue tatami, and lots of guys from different units that came to train. My first instinct was always, if we're close proximity, punching, throwing kicks, and doing a lot of stuff that is almost similar to what we do today when there's, sparring with, small gloves and some white simple shin pads and stuff, and I would just double leg lift, throw, sambo style, no, and I would take everybody to the ground. So not trying to show off and say arrogance or anything, I'm just saying as a fact that when I asked Eli, we need to talk about what happens on the ground. I don't see enough sets of skills back in the day. He did have an angle that is true, that he said, in case of ground fighting, we're not supposed to be specialists. And remember, back in the day when I was doing it, we're talking early 80s, compared to today. There's been an evolution in martial arts and MMA and UFC and Greco-Romans that were considered average. They're not, man, if they lift you and throw you. Sambo guys that were discarded. Everybody thought karate, the one punch. Later on, kickboxers with the low kicks, clinch knees. So there was an evolution, and and later on we heard, MMA, BJJ, and great sets of skills. And I thought, everyone brought their own unique angles that make probably one of the most perfect martial arts on the planet for martial arts, not self-defense yet.
One-on-one, yeah.
So one-on-one, when there's a rule conditions in the octagon or a ring, like, you can throw in a towel, you can tap out. On the ground, in the military vest, back in the day, we had something like it was in Hebrew, Sakin Palasim was like some type of commando knife that, and Eli was right about it. And he said, listen, if I'm on the ground, I'm not going to start, trying to flip the guy over and stuff. I'm going to try to reach for my knife and stab the guy multiple stabs. And we were even talking back in the day, not that we invested hours in knife fighting, but we never talked about slashing. There was only 3 major areas to stab when we were discussing. It was under the armpit, it was between the legs, and it was in the neck. The reason those angles were only straight or side stabs, full force, and to slash if you can when it comes out, was because most enemies will always wear a vest. So back in the day, in the 80s, the vision was, if I'm a combat member engaging with the enemy in front of me, and I needed to go to the ground, Eli said, fingers to the eyes, reach a knife, and just stab the guy. Kill him.
So what do you think about the nowadays Krav Maga? You have the KAMI, KMG, IKMF. Why don't you open your,
Well,
like
to make
Krav Maga Protect organization?
Well, there is PKM, Protect Krav Maga. It's been for 30 years, all around the world. We have plenty. We had, our training facilities in Israel and around the world and everything. I am assuming that I see Krav, because of my military counter-terror experience, in a little bit of a different way. I'm assuming that some will agree and some will disagree, and it's okay. I'm not against people disagreeing. I decided to go into the world of pressure testing and the results, what we call a crash test. You want to really measure how much energy goes into a cockpit of a vehicle. You smash it in a wall and you see, did he survive or not? If the car is shit, they go to the sketchboard, the engineers are called in and said, listen, the dummy died. If it was a real passenger, he would die. Go again until they minimize damage. Me, because I have witnessed so much violence and extreme acts of terrorism, and I've been to quite a few operations, not all people walked in my shoes and seen the shit that I've seen. So their judgment that I will block 360 and grab the hand and turn the hand around and bend the wrist and oh yeah, good luck with that. So I'm not criticizing here on your channel anybody. I think all guys are great. I just don't think they're doing enough pressure testing, in my humble opinion, and it's okay if they disagree with me, or, it's an opinion. I think most Krav Magas focus on a lot of great sets of skills that are really, really good. They have great kicks, real good striking, real good maneuvering, but there's not enough pressure testing on the big, big problems.
The gun, the knife.
The gun, the knife, the baton that we did in the past. I mean, if you want to defend the baton from it's not real. So again, I love all the Israeli guys that are doing a great service to, the public. I think they're doing a great job. There's many names out there that I love their work. Even if I disagree with them, I still love their work. It's okay to disagree. And that's where my status is. I'm in the middle somewhere where you like it, you don't. It's almost like food in a restaurant. Yeah. So I keep it simple.
Okay. What is the big difference between civilian Krav Maga and military Krav Maga?
Well, I think, if you want to have a dojo, a martial arts school, a Krav school, you're attracting from young ages children all the way up to adults. And in that environment, it's a business. I'm talking about the word business. At the end of the day, people want to earn money, and that's not a crime to want to make a lot of money. I love making money. I think everybody should love making money as long as they give a real good service to the customer. Therefore, if you're training children, you adapt a methodology that suits little children. If you have adult clients that are a little bit overweight, out of shape, I'm assuming that in your regime, you're doing a lot of fitness, cardio, you're talking about maybe nutrition, they hit the pads in the bag a lot. You don't want your clients also to get bruised and injured. So those type of formulas are completely acceptable for those who want to do, join a club, be in a group of amazing people, inspired, you have a regime, you go to the school twice a week, 3 times a week, you do a little bit weight training and strength training. It's way before the punching and the kicking. I think I discussed this in other podcasts that most people neglect their health and their body so badly. And their performance, just to use the body, jump, stretch, do full squat with, you can extend your muscles and ligaments all the way down. You're flexible. You can avoid injuries by being flexible and strong. Your recovery from injuries is good if your nutrition's good and you're healthy. So I think instructors that know what I'm talking about focus on that as well. And that's really important key factor for the client. You may have a child or a young guy that's 12, 13, he's bullied in school. A real good instructor wants to build strong character. So, talking about what I do, and that's my cup of tea. I have been in that movie. I had hundreds of students. Most of my business was based on training high-level security. I had contracts with the government, and we've done very well. I will say that Protect Krav Maga is more designed for the high level law enforcement because I think naturally, based on the training that I've done in the past, the way I handle weapons, guns, ammunition, force on force, CQB, kill house, training a lot of guys to do high level security with the hand to hand, with the weapon, combat at zero. When shit goes down real bad and we smash, I can set cameras and make a measurement and say, we need to go again and do it again. And that's what we're doing right now in the service, and it saves a lot of lives. So I think that's my philosophy. I love what other people do, but I like my own niche angle as well.
Nowadays, in the USA, the police officers go to BJJ classes. What do you recommend Krav Maga for them, for police, or BJJ?
Well, if we're talking about different jurisdictions, geographics that are different, for example, the United States, and I'll talk about the US, and I'll talk about Brazil, for example. I've been in both. So, grappling is an amazing set of skills that it gives you great control on the ground if things go bad and the officer needed or was challenged by a very physical man with mass and he did go to the ground. Not all men and women are the same mass. Your opponent, you don't get to choose what mass and size he is and the amount of aggression and how bad he wants to kill you or reach for your gun and take it. So from gun retention, standing up, what happens with gun retention on the ground? Great sets of skills. I think for police in general, and I agree on certain angles, I call it the Krav soft solutions. Controlling, restraining, using force to achieve a handcuff is by far more superior than smashing the guy, getting in trouble with internal affair, losing your job, going to court, maybe even paying a large amount of money in a civil lawsuit. So, great. The downside of it is that police officer going to be on the ground with one guy, but what happens when he has buddies and they're coming? That's where the Krav comes in.
Yeah.
So I think the ground training, excellent. Added a little bit more of the Krav, and I think you would have a real good formula. The Krav teaches something that in no other martial arts, only law enforcement guys would know what I'm talking about. The awareness. You see, when you go to a BJJ school and you wear a belt, because I've grappled with guys that are really like high-level grapplers, 99% of all occasions start on the knees. We start on our knees. It's not a natural place to be on our knees. I mean, from stand up to the ground, that's reality. With your vest, with your belt, do you have the same agility?
Yeah, the problem they train in the kimono.
The gi, pajama. I call them pajamas. Yeah.
I think they should train with the vest, with the rifle.
Exactly. So exactly. So for us in the Israeli environment, and I'll go back to Brazil in a second because in the Israeli environment, a combat soldier, watch any YouTube video where they're at a check post, checking, vehicles with, so-called suspects. 99% of all these combat members are wearing a full-scale heavy vest. Some of the vests we've measured in Jerusalem with some of the platoons we worked with. The vest with ceramic plates, 21, 23 kilos with the water pack in the back, camel pack. You got your M4 on you, you got your gun, you got your helmet. That is a 23 kilo. I want to see people start doing, So I'm not saying it's not a good skill. I'm just saying, does the environment permit you? So if I don't want to be on the ground and I know I will be surrounded by a certain group of violent people, do I choose to be on the ground? The answer is I don't want to be there. Maybe we need to increase the level of awareness and security in a certain way where a single operator is backed up by another 2 or 3 guys. If we're going to go and work in a high-risk area where we know it's a high risk, a bad neighborhood for an American cop, because many of the patrol police work single. Back to Brazil, that was a very interesting experience. A couple of years ago, I went to train with one of our instructors over there, a real great guy, Clesio. And I was training, I think, around 40, 45 police officers from shock team in Bope, counter-terror teams. They have their own crimes in the favelas. And I asked them, why do you want Krav Maga? Because you guys are like, you got BJJ, you got Vale Tudo, you guys are like, and they are really tough people. It turned out to be, they said, no, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, no good. And I said, what? Why? They said when the cops go to the ground, all the criminals know valetudo, BJJ, and grappling. So it's almost plus minus. They don't really have a much more better leverage. A lot of criminals know how to fight. So it's like, imagine you work in a prison, you're a grappler, but the guy's in the prison, he's a grappler too, so you want to handcuff him. He gives you a fight. Then the other problem is, they said, the gangs never work alone. When you're on the ground, all of them carry knives and short blades. You don't even see it. You won't even see. They hide a small blade in the collar of a shirt. You're grappling with a guy, he pulls it and he stabs you. So they lost, I think in the last time I was there and I spoke to them, they said they lost more than 120 policemen in a year from being stabbed from criminals. Now, the cop comes, approaches him with, his rifle, his gun, and still he got stabbed. So you ask yourself, how is it possible? Being so close.
So the last question, I saw your videos with the classic Krav Maga techniques. When did you understand that you have to change the Krav Maga technique?
Well, I even think I posted something, I was requested, I think it was the mid-80s, 86, 87. So when I was in the counter-terror team and I was a trainee, training is rigorous, very physical, very demanding, exhausting, and we were doing a lot of slash Krav, hand-to-hand combat back in the day. When I saw some of the techniques that were taught back 85, 86, and I was going in the field getting really problematic guys, like not me alone, of course, not James Bond, but me and my teams would go out. And some of the teammates, so it's for real. We would go and get real bad guys, and we're talking about, you're trying to bring down a guy similar to a Viking. The guy has biceps like this, a neck like this, 220, 250 pounds, 260 pounds, very aggressive individual, jihadi mentality. And you think you're going to grab his hand and do, Mickey Mouse Jiu-Jitsu on the guy. And even if you're a black belt in BJJ, I am telling you right now, that guy will give you a fight like hell, because they punch, they headbutt, they spit, they stab, they carry guns, they kick. They're crazy. And we were going into the field, and some of our guys were getting seriously bruised. I don't want to say fatally injured, but took a lot of blows. It would take sometimes 5 guys, that I'm talking about elite warriors, to bring down a guy that he's a caveman. And you would ask yourself, what has gone wrong? And lucky, blessed by God, that, my judo and sambo background, and I said, listen, something's got to change here. So first of all, I said, listen, we got to stop this grabbing the hands and trying to control a guy from the arms and stuff. So yeah, you can go double leg and take him down, but he's still fighting you on the ground. The only way to stop a guy was to choke him out, or the neck locks that we do. So first of all, I started as an instructor. I was already appointed as an instructor, I think in the 86, 87, something like that, for the unit. So I was in head of all hand-to-hand combat training for all team members, the recruits in training, and all the top guys in the teams. And we would discuss, like we're discussing today, sit down on the ground and say, what went wrong? What do we need to fix? And I said, listen, guys, we need to go more into grappling. We need to learn how to grapple. What you see law enforcement guys, BJJ and stuff, it was not called BJJ in the 80s, 85, 86, 87. But I brought in, I requested a donation, and we bought about 150 judo gis. I wanted people to learn how to control fabric. What happens when you hold from the neck? What happens when you hold the sleeve? I want to do an arm drag. I want to bring him in. I want to go down to the legs. I want to lift. I want to throw. I want to choke him out. I want to control the neck. You look at lions. Lions don't bite the legs. Lions go to the neck. I said, no. This has got to change. So I think the breaking point was that when my chief, Major General Ron, I had a group that was following me late at night, coming to classes on my own, like voluntary stuff. I was not yet the instructor in the unit, and we were doing a lot of groundwork, and I was showing locks and chokes and escapes and stuff, and the gun on the ground, and doing all these real crazy drills. And the guys are very physical, like really, really physical, above average, and motivated. Like, I want to do that again. What was that? What was that? Show me again. Show me again. Like, and the boss, he came by. It was a huge hangar. And he came by with his vehicle, and he looked, and he was looking at us like almost midnight. Guys are beating the shit out of each other. What are you guys doing here? And I said, oh, sir, we're training. He said, what is it you're doing? I said, oh, we're talking about some techniques. And the next day, he saw I had a group of followers, and he called me up into his office. Itay Gil to Major General Ron's office, and was called up to his office like, what have I done now? I thought I was in trouble. So I go up to his room, and yes, sir. And he says, sit down. He says, what is it you're doing? I explained to him my whole concept, idea, philosophy that things need to change in the combat training for the guys to save more lives and minimize damages and more injuries, just like the American cops are looking to minimize damage. And here we are, so many years later. He looked at what I did, and he said, I want private training. So I told him, I'll have to kick your ass a little bit. He agreed. He was a tough guy too, tough commander, legend. And the next day after training, he called me in the office. He said, I am appointing you to do hand-to-hand combat trainer for the unit. And I believe I made a revolution back in the day, because I was talking about takedowns and, single leg, double leg throws, grabbing the neck, coming from behind, taking the neck, taking the throat, not dealing with the wrist and elbow joints as much, because when guys are really strong and aggressive and moving, it's difficult. But taking, the head and, we need to do a lot of high-risk operations in a short time. I don't have time to grapple with the guy on the ground or start sparring the guy in the middle of a hostile neighborhood, infested with terrorists. So we need to come, we need to go 15 seconds. I need to have that guy in the van, and we're gone. And that was the drill. So I think that's what made, I think I was in the right place in the right time to be an influencer, to look at life in reality of risk, straight in the eye and say, hey, this is not a regular game. This is not a sport. Our combat members don't have the liberty to tap out when shit goes real bad. That's what people don't understand. The level of stress, you may die in a confrontation. You may get stabbed or fatally injured. And just recently, we lost one guy from the unit. And a month or 2 months before that, one of our guys got seriously shit between the vest into the spine, and he's out of commission for now. Like, we're talking shit for real. And, maybe it's good we're talking about this for the audience to understand that if you're going to do Krav or any hand-to-hand combat, make sure you're doing the right shit. That's my vision.
Okay, thank you, Itay Gil.
Thank you so much.